Hello.
Hello, hello, hello.
Can you hear me?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay.
How you doing today?
I'm good. I'm trying to troubleshoot some issues. My teachers are having problems getting on their assessment platform. 1 second.
Oh, no problem.
How are you? I feel like it's so crazy because I haven't seen you for real in forever.
Yeah.
But like I see you in the babies on Facebook, so I'm like, I feel like I know what's going on.
Well, that's why Facebook's good, but yeah. I mean, you've known me since I was a baby, so.
Right. And now you got babies.
Now I got babies, yeah. And I'm not a baby no more. So
right.
It's always interesting to see how those things work.
It is. And now it's like the next generation. So my dad tutored Aisha in math, and now I'm working with the girls in math. I'm like, it's the next, like, we're just gonna keep it going. And now we're doing something like, you know what? We're just gonna keep it going. The next generation. So
that's what it's all about. That's why it's essential that we have these generations passing down the information.
Absolutely. I agree.
Even so I think about Kwanzaa. Like I think about Kwanzaa, like I wouldn't have known about Kwanzaa if I didn't do that with your family. Really?
Oh. Look, and now you get to pass it on to your babies.
Yep. Well, I thank you for accepting my request. I like to put those out there just to see the feedback that I get. But like being an athlete and all that stuff, you get to skip a lot of these levels, but then we don't have any of the conversations, so a lot of, people are like, oh, dumb athletes and all these things, but we never have these, deeper conversations where we're learning and growing and using our platform to uplift other people too, outside of the realm of sports, outside the realm of like entertainment. And so that was one of the things I realized. I'm like, man, like I no longer play football. I don't really watch football anymore. And then, I get involved in community, and obviously being a parent now, exposes you to a whole new level and a whole new world, I feel like.
World.
Yeah, of everything going on. You start to think a lot more about like these little things. Like I was like, why would I put my kids in any of these schools, or daycares when I'm like, we're in Ohio. We're in Columbus, Ohio. I don't know how familiar you are with Columbus, Ohio, but it is, first of all, Ohio's a red state, and so
the state, it ain't for us. They ain't about us.
Man. And so, Columbus and Franklin County is the county we live in, is where most of the Black people live. And of course, that's the one blue speck in like our region. And so we've been here for 6 years now. I've been in Ohio for 10 now. But, moving through the different rural areas, because my school was in Athens, Ohio, which is like 3,000 people, but when the school's in session, it's like 30,000. And so a lot of these like small towns that are just like 30 minutes outside of Columbus, which is the major city, which is the capital of the state, it's still very like old and outdated because it's still rural. And we don't talk about rural, we only talk about urban. And so for me, it's just been a real growing phase of just learning how, the American ecosystem just even works in general. Like, and Ohio is, always been known as like a swing state. So I'm like, if Ohio's that powerful, there must be something going on here. Then we moved here, and it was like, I read an article that said Columbus was second to Washington, D.C. in wealth to poverty ratio. So I was like, well, I grew up in Washington, D.C., so I know what that lifestyle is like. So it must not be any different over here. But I can't afford to live in Washington, D.C., and, it's a different world. And so that's kind of how we landed here. Jen, her family's from Zanesville, which is a smaller town, about an hour outside of Columbus. And so obviously she feels way more comfortable here. I'm like, I grew up in Rochester, New York. You can dump me anywhere and I'll be okay.
Good. Right. I'll be all right.
So that's how we kind of ended up here, and, just been making moves, and, she's doing great in her career. And I decided to take the entrepreneurial route and the stay-at-home dad route. So that's what I've been doing and going with it.
Yeah. So she is rocking it. You think you guys will stay there for a while since she's doing so well with the
Yeah, we don't have no reason to really move. I would say, like, where we gonna go? Like, for me,
right.
you get
from the cold.
Well, for me, I'm like, yeah, like I would love to be someplace warm, but you know, it's like, yeah, where you go, Florida, Texas.
Right.
And I mean, it's really not bad. Like once you get like, I like the season still, right? I still like the ability to see all the seasons. It's beautiful when fall hits. We have so many nature parks and all that stuff. But like for me, I'm like, yeah, if I'm gonna move someplace warm, I need to move to an island somewhere. You know, so you know, we went to the Dominican Republic because like California, I'm not moving to California. California's gonna burn up, it's gonna fall off, earthquakes, all this stuff. Cost of living. So, you know, we're in the middle of the country, you know, so we can go any which way, down, above. So yeah, I think we'll stay here. There's a lot of money here. There's a lot of opportunity here. Being the fact that there's not a lot of Black people, being the fact that there's not a lot of Black business owners, there's not a lot of people from the East Coast that have that same kind of mindset, that same go-getter mindset. It's easy. You know, like the competition level really isn't there. You got to think, growing up in DC, everything is about competition. You know, like how do you get to the next level? You know, and so it's that. And so here it's it's slower for sure. But you know, in terms of like business and seeing opportunities, creating opportunities, I mean, I've met the mayor probably 2 or 3 times of the city. I've done work with the different mayors from different little subsects and suburbs. So like for me, like I've been able to make a lot of different moves and impacts that people don't even know about because I don't post everything, but it's like I'm getting involved on these higher level things where I'll walk in a meeting with my fitted on in a hoodie like this, and I'm talking to politicians, you know what I mean? And mostly white suburbs. And so for me, it's like, you know, I can't really lose here. But yeah, it's just dealing with the whole culture. You know, obviously people are like, you know, you're East Coast, so I'm a little bit probably more rude than everybody else. But you know, I think, you know, Jen likes what she does, and she moved up fairly quickly. I mean, she's only been out of school for 7 years, and I mean, she's a news anchor at. I mean, they're usually battling for 1, 2, and 3 in their respective news spots, I guess. So she went from a producer or executive producer to being a traffic anchor, and then now she has her own segment, and then she's a weekend anchor. So she went from like making 40,000 to like 85,000 in 4 years.
Yes, Jen.
So, and then her station has, you know, probably the most Black people on the station. They got her first when she was doing traffic, it was her. The main anchor was a Black guy, and then they had a Black traffic guy. So they were probably the most diverse, you know, on camera staff in the city. So that's pretty big. And I mean, you got to think news, even though like I don't really watch the news. I'm like, I don't watch the news, but her demographic, typically older people, she's probably in front of 100,000 plus people every day, you know, when she's on camera. So, you know, she's definitely making her impact, and, you know, she's learning and growing. You know, I try to help her because I'm a little bit more like against the establishment. But,
like, no, you don't have to take that, baby. Go for what you want.
Well, now I'm like, yo, you've already made it to this level. Like now you have the credentials. Now with digital media, like I'm doing what she does, but I don't have the technical skills that she has. You know what I mean? So I'm like, yo, we could start our own thing. You know, you don't need to keep listening to old white men tell you what to do. You know what I mean? And tell the stories that you want to tell. Tell the stories that, you know, you feel are important. Yeah. And that's the one thing that really, and that's why I even started doing this, because I realized that I understood the power of media when I was playing sports. Like everybody hates athletes, but it's not our fault we have the platform. You know what I mean? Like it's not our fault, you know, ESPN or Fox or all these people, you know, put you on the platform, and then you get exposed to all the white people. Now you have some form of power, but then, you know, you don't really, a lot of these guys don't have the education. You know, we're not coming from families, majority aren't coming from families that are educating them. They're not coming from families who spent time with your family. and, you know, focused on math and stuff like that. So, you know, I realized the power of media, because at OU, we were terrible. And then we started winning and we started being on ESPN a lot more. Yeah. And then once we started playing on ESPN a lot more, you started seeing a lot more money coming through. But whole time, the players aren't getting paid. You know, most of my teammates are poor. Most of my teammates, you know.
Money going to the program.
Right, right. It's going for this. And then you realize, oh, it goes to the program. But then, you know, once people get mad, they realize, oh, the football team just got $50 million for an indoor facility. Now you have academia talking about something. They can't just be the only ones using the indoor facility. We're the ones that got the facility here in the first place. You know, like the average student isn't doing anything. You know, you wouldn't even have the recognition, because even when we started winning, application rates started to increase, because guess what? People want to be attached to winning, period.
Right.
You know, so if kids see this team winning and they're like, oh, that school seems cool, I've never heard of it. Oh, let me put my application there. And so then how much are they charging for the application? Just to, you know, put your application in. So for me, it was just like, man, there's so much power in the media. There's so much power in information and conversation. And so I was just like, I just want to have conversations, open dialogue, and have people share their stuff. I'll record it, put it on YouTube, rip the audio, put it on my podcast, and then we'll just keep going. And we'll hopefully get these voices out there. So that's my whole idea behind this. So how you been?
Hey, I'm hanging in there. Look, taking it day by day. I'm in Maryland now, and they're getting ready to go back to school. In Frederick.
Okay.
So it's like an hour outside of Baltimore.
Okay.
So it's a crazy time for us, because teachers are trying to figure out, like, am I going back to school? Do I sacrifice my health, my family's health, so that I can keep making this money, or can I afford not to go to school? So a lot of people are making some tough decisions and having some tough conversations. So it's interesting. And I'm just like, it is.
Because change is the one thing, right? That we all got to do.
And people need to know, like, you have a choice. Like, some people are like, well, I don't have a choice. You always have a choice.
You always got a choice.
Always have a choice. You don't have to do this. It might mean that y'all can't, you know, eat the same way that you've been eating or live in the same place, but you always have a choice.
Right.
So
we get so comfortable in what we're sold. You know, you're sold, oh, you can be a teacher, you can help, and you'll have a steady paycheck, you'll have a 401k, you'll have the backing of the school. But then we don't realize our school system is built the same way that American government's built, so it's not really helping, and it's outdated mostly. So unless you're in a very progressive community, you still got schools that look like they're prisons, you know? Yeah. And so, like, and that's what I see.
Like prisoners, so.
Yeah, you know, like, that's what I mean, obviously going to private school, it's like, all right, you get this, but then, like, I remember the public schools in DC, and, like, my friends that went there, and they had to go through metal detectors. And then if you just look at the schools, like, well, who's building the school? The same contractor that built the prison built the school, because they're the ones, the construction companies are the ones in connection with the politicians and government. And so, like, I literally, like, especially in Ohio, I will look at the inner city schools. I'm like, yo, these joints look just like prisons, for real, for real. You know, like, it's sad. And then, like, the community we were living in, they just built a $400 million public school.
And it's still gonna be trash. How much money you spend, it's still
they got one of the best schools though in the state, because they have I mean, it's a rich neighborhood, you know, so they got programs, the kids could do pretty much everything. But then check this out. The school is actually built on a Black man's land, and they have an acre of land that was dedicated for a cemetery, and they've built over top of it. And they just came out with this information about 2 years ago. And so they did a dig. They did a small dig where they dug up like 6 burials. There were bones in like 3 of the burials. So they still have to excavate this entire acre plot of land, and there's no telling how many bodies is underneath, you know, and it's just a parking lot now. It's where the students park. But it's like, there's no telling how much, you know, because then it was like, well, they didn't have any markers. you know, so they weren't, you know, they probably just putting bodies on top of bodies. It was a black man's land. So
technology to be able to look to see what's in the land. Like you have the technology to say like, oh, what's down here? It's not like it's 35 feet down under the ground.
Well, that's what they've been doing now. Yeah. And it's an all-white community.
They did that before they built. Like they have to know what they're building on. They did that and they said, oh, it's just some old black bones. We don't care about that. Go ahead and put the parking lot right there. They knew that. Yep. You don't just discover that. It just got leaked.
Well, you had two white ladies wrote a book about it. And so they grew up, one of the ladies grew up in the area, and she just had a hunch, and she was going around the grave sites cleaning them up, basically. That's what her job was. And so she started making these connections, and then wrote a book called Secrets Under the Parking Lot, and kind of dug up this information and brought it to the surface. And I just so happened to be a coach at the school, and then started getting involved in the politics, because I was like, well, it was when Donald Trump got into office. And I was like, yo, there's no black people in this community. And it's literally, you know, maybe a mile outside the city of Columbus. And it's Franklin County where all these black people live. But you have all these mansions, you have a golf course. It's landlocked by Ohio State University, the city of Columbus, and then Grandview, which is another white, it's a little bit more progressive than Upper Arlington. But Upper Arlington is considered like the old money here. And so you got a lot of old traditional money, you know, old inheritances and estates and trust funds and stuff that's been passed down. So a lot of these people never leave because they don't have to, right? They got the house, you know, from a parent, grandparent. So you don't have to pay for living, you know, everything you do is kind of just, why would you leave, right? And so you see that, and it's crazy. And I just decided to speak up because I was like, there's no black people here, and black people clearly aren't speaking up here. And I don't have any like allegiance to this place because I'm not from here. So, you know, it don't really hurt me to say nothing. But they start trying to come after us, but it's just crazy. Like Ohio is very racist. And it's, you know, it's under the cover because it's like, it wasn't a slave state, but they would bring the slaves over from Kentucky, you know, to work in Ohio. You know what I mean? So you still have that, like, very much so, like, white privilege, black people, like, what are you doing? Like, you don't have no power, you don't have no control. So it's an odd place to be, because it's like the black people, like, I'm like, y'all still just work for the man at the end of the day. Like, nobody owns anything, nobody owns any land, you know. And it's like, so, you know, I'm just trying to be a billionaire real quick. And
real quick, let me change the landscape of this here town.
Yeah. I feel it. But yeah, it's been pretty insane getting involved, and I'm nowhere on the level of you or my mom in this academia world. So I'm just trying to pull on all the people I can. Yeah, she used to try to get me. I'd be like, man. But yeah, let's get it. So I want to get into what you were talking about decolonizing parenting, because I've never even heard of that, but it was very interesting that you brought it up, and obviously it clicked right in my brain, and so I was like, let's have her speak on this.
Yeah, it's an interesting topic that I just came across a couple of years ago. So, you know, I've got 4 kids, and they have all been raised very differently, because Kanaya is 19, and then the next one is 11. So there's a huge gap.
Yeah, and that's like me and Andrea, right? Like I was 12 when Andrea was born. So it's just like,
what? And so you learn so much in that gap, right? Like, even you, between the 2 kids, you learn, like, okay, I'm going to do this differently next time. I'm going to try this next time. But a lot of that, what we learn and what we try and what we do, is still based on other people's ideas, right? Like, oh, someone said I'd be a great dad if I did this. Or someone said I can't be a good dad if I stay at home with the kids. Like, I'm supposed to be out there working, and Jen's supposed to be the one at home. So it's really just the idea of challenging what you believe about parenting, and admitting like how racist our style of parenting is. Like, the idea that we have to control our kids, that our kids are not supposed to have agency over their own body. That's white people shit, right? Like, we have to control Black bodies in order for them to be of any good. Right. Whether it was like because of slavery, or like, I'm in Ohio and we're not a slave state, but still we're not going to let these Black folks come over here. Like, we're still going to be very much in control and dominating because that's how we feel we're supposed to be.
Right.
Right. So that idea of like white supremacist thinking,
right.
We talk, it's in education, but it's also in parenting. And so many things when people are like, oh, I'm getting so woke, but you still out here beating your kids because you're like, well, if I don't beat them, then somebody else is going to. Okay. So if we trace that back, it's like, oh, in order for me to keep my kids alive. Right. That's exactly what it is. Right. And so it's like, oh, this is post-traumatic slave syndrome. It's the same thing. And so it's like a lot of times we have to have this conversation with ourselves when we really have to get real. Like, is this really what's best for I don't care that it's what everybody else is doing. Right. Is this what's best for my child and my relationship with the child?
Right.
So it's like, I'm not going to focus just on I'm in control. I'm going to tell you what to do because I'm the adult and you're the child. It's like, look, this is your life. I don't own you.
Right.
You are your own whole person. My job is to help you get to where you're supposed to be. But I don't get to say where you're supposed to be. So I don't get to say you have to go to college. I don't get to say you have to whatever. You have to get married and have grandbabies for me. Even though that's my hope, like, I don't get to control that.
Right.
So instead of me focusing on let me tell you what to do, it's like, what do you need from me? If this is what you want to do, how can I help you get there?
Right.
And so for us, it looks like Kanaya is the only one of my kids who's in traditional school. So she's doing virtual college right now because she ain't going back to campus.
Okay.
But the rest of them, we're unschooling. So the boys, it's like it's self-directed. What you're interested in is what you learn about. And then as your interests change, then what you choose to study changes, right? So they're not in a grade. People always like, so what grade is he in now? I'm like, maybe it's supposed to be third. I don't know. But then I'm like, why does that matter?
Why does it matter?
Right? So people ask those questions because they need some, like, now I can put you in this box and say, oh, you're in third grade, so you know all your multiplication facts, right? Because some random ass person one day decided that by the end of third grade, you need to know how to multiply.
Right.
Nothing that my kids are doing that they're interested in right now requires multiplication. So why would they learn it? Right. It doesn't matter for where they are right now. Right. Now, if one day that changes, they have the skills to learn new things. So when they need to know how to multiply, they'll learn how to multiply. But right now, that's not them not knowing their multiplication facts isn't stopping them from doing what they want to do.
Right.
So it's like, look, as you need these skills, instead of having some random timeline of you're going to learn how to read now, you're going to learn all the capitals of the states now, you're going to learn, all the body parts now, they'll learn those things if and when they need them. So I'm really putting them in control of their learning.
Right.
And not saying the school building is the only place that learning can happen, because we know that's not true.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, on that, I mean, that is very much so like my ideology too, because obviously I got a lot of great experience going through public school in Rochester for a couple years. And then we moved to Maryland and I went to public school for like 2 years. And then I went to the private school. But then 8th grade, I graduated, but I was small and sports was kind of already a thing for us. So my parent, Aisha, my dad decided homeschool would be probably the best option. You know what I mean? And then in that year, I basically taught myself. Aisha had her like stay-at-home job or her business that she was running, but I was pretty much teaching myself from the curriculum. And so I started to learn like, oh, I could teach myself. You know what I mean? So then I went to private school and it was like, again, very regimented. You got to do these things. But then I was getting in trouble. Like, Aisha, like I was getting in trouble for, obviously failing class or not paying attention. But again, I'm going to a $16,000 a year school that Aisha and my dad didn't go to. You know what I mean? So they had no idea how these things operated. I found out my dad had like a 1.6 GPA in high school. You know what I mean? You getting mad at me for having a 2.5 in a private school.
And then when we add the layer of I'm paying for this, now I feel more making you succeed. Not about like having the conversation of, is this really what's best for you?
Right.
Right. And so a lot decolonizing work is like, let me listen to my child
right.
and invite them into the conversation.
Right.
So I don't say like, this is the most expensive school, so this is what's best for you.
Right.
Right. And so when a child is getting in trouble in school and failing, there's a reason.
Right.
There's a reason behind it. We just have to be willing to dig deep and figure out what that reason was. So my kids went to school for a year. They wanted to try it. So, okay, you want to try it? Let's do it. Caden, so my oldest son was like the ideal student. So he's just so sweet. He's doing all the work. You tell him to be quiet, he'll be quiet. So it was perfect. Mm-hmm. Cameron is like, I just want to have fun. Mm-hmm. Like, I can do all this stuff. So he's a kid, like, as soon as he's done with his work, he'll be done in 2 seconds. And then, like, I want to talk to my friends because that's what I'm here for. Like, so night and day, and I would get calls from Cameron's teacher and be like, well, Cameron is still talking. He won't stop talking to his friends and blah, 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 blah. And so they wanted me to come up to the school and punish him. So they wanted to see me punish him. Right. And I had to explain that that's not how we operate.
Right.
It's like, well, I'm like, I can give you strategies of things that you can do differently to try to get him engaged. Right. Like, he likes to read. Instead of just being like, sit there and be quiet, like, let him pull out a book and read. Right. If he needs to get up, let him get up and move around. Like, I'm not going to do your job for you. Yeah. Nor am I going to have a relationship with my child for doing what he's supposed to be doing at 7 years old. He's supposed to be inquisitive. He's supposed to be talking. Not disrespectful and being like, no, I'm not going to be quiet. He'll be quiet for a second. And then his brain is like, you need to talk. Right. Because he's always talking. So it's like, I had to say, okay, we're going to figure out what works for him. And then we'll figure out how this cannot disrupt the class. Because I don't want, him being free is not at the expense of everybody else in the classroom. Right. But I'm not going to tell him like, oh, go sit in the corner, or have him thinking like, I'm going to call your mom and you're going to get in trouble. Like, right. Don't tell him that. Because he's not. He knows he's not. We'll have a conversation and we'll talk about what he needs. And she was just like, oh, so you're not going to like take away his games? And I'm like, how's that going to help?
Yeah. Like, what does that
like mean? Privileges, it's not going to help him learn how to handle this situation better. So that's one of the things where it's like people want to punish their kids because it makes them feel better. Right? Like, you hurt me, really my feelings, right? Like, you hurt my because you're failing and I'm paying all this money for this school. So now I'm going to take away something that you really like. Right. But that's not helping solve the problem of why you're failing in school. Like, is it because you're bored? Is it because there's something you don't understand? Is it because you're tired and you can't focus at school? Like, what's the underlying issue? And let's work to make sure we can solve that to really help you in these areas where you're struggling. Right. So a lot of people just think because this is how, we were treated as kids, or we were conditioned, like as a parent, you just punish your child until they get so mad or get so hurt, they do something different. Right. Versus, let me help you figure out what's a better way to do this. Like, let's work together to figure out what it is that you need and how can I fill that need for you. Right. So it's a whole mindset shift, but it goes back to like, am I willing to challenge what I think a good parent is, right? Or what society even now is telling me I'm supposed to do to be a good mom, especially to little Black babies, right? Yeah. Like, oh my gosh, you don't beat your kids. They're going to be crazy. Like, they're going to be out in these streets cussing you out. No, they're not. Right. Yeah. They're not. Because I respect them and we have conversations. Right. And they're learning how to have agency over their own bodies and to know that they deserve to have a voice. So my goal is, raising kids who don't have to wonder like, well, am I allowed to say this? Should I say this? Am I worthy of being able to advocate for myself? Like, yeah, you've been doing that since you were 2. Keep doing it, baby. Keep doing it. Yeah.
That's so powerful. I mean, it gives so much power to us as individuals too, because that's one of the things too. It's like, you go to private school and you see the white kids, they do whatever the fuck they want to do. And their parents don't say nothing. And it's just like, but I'm getting that, like, and so those mixed messages that you get. So even, like you say, I mean, everything is basically colonized in terms of how we're treating, our situations. And then we're not understanding like the nuances and, this Black child is way different, even though, the system is set up this way. We can't be involved in this the same way. We have to, utilize things differently. And that's kind of what I realized. That's why I decided to be a stay-at-home dad, because it was really like you only get, obviously my dad was 17 when he had me. So those first few years of my life, I was with grandparents and aunts and uncles and cousins. And so I still remember some of those things, but I'm just like, it's so like the foundation of a baby and a child, especially in those early years, are so powerful. You know what I mean? And if you're not spending time with your own kid and you got them in daycare for 6 hours out of the day, you know, and then they only see you in the morning and then in the afternoon or evening, you're not even building a relationship with your kid, because by the time, you know, everything is going on, you're either tired, he's tired, or she's tired. And then, you know, and so it was just like, for me, I was like, I'm willing to take that chance of being different, right? Because it's still like going out and being the only dad at the playgrounds, you know, and just seeing a bunch of stay-at-home white moms and they got their little friend groups. It's still very weird. But, you know, like I see so much power in like my kids and their development and their ability to just be who they are without having those barriers of school, without having the barriers of their teachers calling us every day because, you know, my son is active and he wants to jump off of tables and stuff like that. When I can allow that to happen, you know what I mean? I could understand and change course and protect him and be there for him. And then we weren't really expecting Harper. It kind of just happened, but it was just like, all right, well, we're here now. Yeah. And so, but it's been, and then as a protective thing, like as a dad, I'm like, yo, like, I'm gonna go crazy if somebody do something to my kids and I done gave this person, and who's at fault? I'm at fault because I put my kid in the situation. You know what I mean? So I can't really be mad, you know, I can be, but it's like, how can I protect that situation from happening, especially early on in their lives? Because I remember getting in trouble in even elementary school or pre-K and that same situation happening, right? Mom have to come in and, you know, punish you. And it's just like, yo, like, I'm a child. Yeah. And so seeing that and understanding it, definitely becoming a parent has forced me to like, you know, reprogram and rethink and make that shift, because that's what it takes too. It takes those kind of people like you and I to really say, hey, we noticed this and we're going to make the shift. It may not be popular opinion, but why is everybody doing the things that they're doing in the first place, right? We still got a lot of people in the corporate slave mentality that the only reason their kids are in school is because you are not an entrepreneur. You're not a business person. So you can't even be involved in your child's life, even if they are in school, where you have a stay-at-home mom who can at least show up to school on time, who can come to school and just be there for activities, who can go on field trips, you know, all these different things that happen. There's a lot of power in that. But then if you look at economics, yeah, they have husbands and people that have, you know, that have been making hundreds of thousands of dollars for, you know, decades now. So they have a cush living situation. So it's like, yeah, you can stay at home.
I don't have to. My husband does all of this and he takes care of us. And there are a lot of us who aren't in that situation, right? Who are single parents and we're like, I don't have anybody else coming in to help me with the bills. And the bills are gonna keep on coming. Yeah. So what does that do? And it's scary, right? To try something different when you at least you know, okay, I'm gonna get this little bitty paycheck every 2 weeks. I know it's not gonna be enough, but I know it's gonna be something, versus me trying to step out there and say, okay, this is what my passion is. This is what I want to do and how I want to impact the world. I don't know how I'm gonna make money doing it. And I gotta feed these kids. It's hard. And like you said, the system is not set up for us to succeed. That's in school, that's in business, it's in life, right? So we have to figure out, what am I going to do? Like, what really matters to me? And for me, someone asked me when I was like, I really want to homeschool before the boys were even school age. And I kept saying that like year after year, and I wasn't doing anything to be in that position. And then my coach was like, so basically what you're saying is like, what's most important to you is your way of life and maintaining that versus you being able to raise your kids the way you want to. And I was like, okay, no, that sounds terrible. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. I'll give all this shit up so I can be with my babies. And then I told my boss, I was like, so I'm not going to come back next year because I want to homeschool the boys. And she was like, oh, no. We can't do that. So basically she was like, what if you just came in 2 days a week instead of 5 days a week? And then you can homeschool on the other 3 days. And I was like, I think I can make that work. I think I can do that. right? Like I was just gonna quit, and I didn't know what I was gonna do. But I was like,
that's the thing though. When you're great at what you do and you're good at what you do, they will always make space for you. You know, but a lot of times we get these jobs, and this is another part of colonization. We get this job, it's a good paying job, we got benefits, healthcare, whatever, and we like, yo, if I can't make my boss mad, I can't ask for something else. And it's like, that is a slave mentality. Like, yo, if they're not going to give you what you want, you can go someplace else that will. And or if you don't raise your voice or say something, you know, nothing's going to change. And, you know, I see that a lot. And part of me is just like, it's my athletic privilege, right? Like, I'm used to kind of being like, you get the athletic privilege where you get to do whatever you want, kind of, and people listen, or, you know, people protect the athlete as you get through. And so I've just kind of carried that mentality, but it's not like I'm not an idiot. So I read, I do my own research, but it's like, once you get into corporate America, it's like the same thing. It's like, yo, if I want something different, if I want to be paid more, and this job's only going to give me a percentage of an increase, but I'm supposed to be a great employee, I'll just leave. And guess what? If they don't want to pay, if they really want me, they'll make a way, you know? And that's just the confidence I think, you know, we have to have.
That's what, because like you said, you have experience with that. So your athletic privilege gave you that mentality. We're like, I can ask for more, I can get it, and I get it. Oh, okay. All I gotta do is ask. Like, now I want this. Okay, you got it. But then there are people who their trauma from their childhood taught them, like, you don't have a voice. Right? You don't get to ask for what you want. Right? Like, as a child, like, mommy, I want, no, you gonna eat what's right here. You gonna wear what's right here. We gonna go wherever I say go. So their response, and they carry that into adulthood. Like, I have to be quiet and take what the person in power gives to me. And I'm supposed to be grateful for it. Right? Like, I put a roof over your head, I give you, so I have to be grateful. So people think that the way we treat our kids stops when they're not kids anymore, but they carry those same mindsets into adulthood. And then you see the adults who won't speak up for themselves, who don't believe that they deserve better, and they end up in this shitty cycle, and they're just repeating it with their kids generation after generation.
Yeah, and that's what I realized too. I was just like, wow, like, you know, I saw some of those, like you just said, I saw those things happening. And then even just people not speaking up. And that's why I started being so vocal, like even about cannabis and stuff like that. It's like, you have to use your voice. It's the one thing that we do have. You know what I mean? And if you're not willing to step up and use it based on your own just experience, nobody can help you. You can't even help yourself. But then nobody else can help you because nobody knows what's going on in your world. Nobody knows what's going on in your brain, what you see, what you experience. And so, like, for me, like, now I'll get it because obviously I'm up here. And so a lot more white people are my friends, or they follow me on social media because of sports. White people wouldn't know who I was if it wasn't for sports, right? Like, I wouldn't have been at the private school if it wasn't for sports, period. I wouldn't have been at Ohio University, which is, when I first got on campus, we had 400 Black students out of 30,000 students. You know, would all those white people know who I was if it wasn't for sports? No, you know. And so even making it to the NFL, you get to the NFL and now people are your fans, but they only support you in that arena. They're not supporting your life. Like, they don't ask you questions about your life. You know, how did you get to this point? Why do you feel this way? Why do you even play football? Like, it's the most damaging sport there is. Like, why would you even do something like that? You know what I mean?
Crazy things for my journey. Growing up, you know, with my dad, with my brother, my cousins, I always wanted to have boys so they could play football. I mean, I'm like, I can't wait. Then my nephew started playing. I was at every single game. I'm running up and down the sideline with him every time he got the ball. Like, yo, let's go. Like, I can't wait till it's my kids. And then I had kids. And I was like, hold up. What am I letting them do? Like, all of this brain injury that's coming out from football? Like, no, we're not doing this. And I couldn't believe, like, for my whole life, I was excited about this thing. And then I had to think, like, okay, I can control the situation and make them play football.
Right.
However, want them to have some good sense. So I'm okay if y'all don't want to do football. And then they want to do basketball. I don't know nothing about basketball, Gerald. Nothing at all. Nothing. I don't even watch like professional basketball. I'm like, I can't, how do you even get hype over basketball? I don't know nothing about this. I was like, but it's safer. At least you're not over there getting knocked in your head. So, but that willing to shift and me let go of that control, especially when it's a dream that I've had forever, right. is a part of my decolonization work, right? Like not having to control everything they do. And like, look, if this is what you want, let's do it. But if it's not, I'm okay.
Control the situation though, because a lot of these, I mean, I started playing football at 7, you know what I mean? So who signed me up for football, right? So we got to understand what we're putting our kids into and understand the ramifications, right? Like, all right, I started playing football at 7 years old. I played all the way till 22. How many concussions have I had? I have no clue, right? Because we just started talking about concussions 6 years ago, 7 years ago, maybe 8 years ago. So like even in college, the whole concussion protocol thing didn't really start until like my sophomore, junior year. You know what I mean? So even the helmets, I mean, I think about, all right, the kids that don't have the finances to have great quality equipment or great coaches that understand the game. Like you have coaches lining up kids 20 yards apart doing head-to-head collisions in practice. And everybody loves it because it's a loud bang. But then one of the kids gets up woozy and everybody's like, oh, shake it off. That's a concussion. You know, be tough. You know what I mean? And so it's so many of those things that we've been so conditioned again and colonized in, because what is it? As a football player, yes, you can skip a lot of steps, right? You can be a great athlete, football player, and go to the great private school, right? Where they're not accepting Black kids for academics or all these other things, but you're generating publicity for the school and recognition for the school if you succeed as a great athlete. So again, that it's a cycle. And so for me, I learned like, oh, like I knew football was going to take me places because I didn't just play safety. I played quarterback, you know what I mean? So I wasn't getting hit all the time and I was smart. But a lot of guys aren't coming from the same family that I'm coming from, don't have the same background. So they're not going into the situation the same way that I was approaching the situation as a means to an end. So most guys, you get involved, parents put you in, you accelerate, you get to college, and then you realize, well, once you get to college, they really don't care about you because now it's like you got to produce. And if you're not producing, you don't play. And so, but then most guys, why are they playing football? Because they think, oh, if I make it to the NFL and I get $1 million, I'll be rich. I'll be able to take care of my mom. I'll be able to retire my mom, retire my dad, buy a house, buy a car. You got $1 million and you're a highly paid employee. So you still got to pay taxes. And so then you got to pay taxes in every state that you play in. And then you're living a high lifestyle. So you got a nice car, you buy everything retail, you go get a mortgage, you go, you're eating out every night, you're buying your girl, or you probably got kids already because the money is gone. So then, all right, you get hurt, you tear an ACL, you're done. And so why don't we see any of our professional athletes after the fact? We only see the big ones, but there's thousands of guys out there who have made the NFL or made collegiate sports, and they're nowhere to be found because their bodies are wrangled, their minds are ravished, and then you don't have health care. You don't have anybody really checking in on you. Nobody cares about you anymore because you're not providing a service. You were before providing a service of entertainment. And I think it's entertainment to everybody watching it, but the athletes, it's not entertainment, it's their life, right? So if I get hurt in the game and we win or lose, I still got to go back to my situation and I still got to deal with this injury. I still got to deal with the mind of the injury. And now what do I do now if football's taken away from me, but football is the only thing I've done consistently? It's the only thing that I've been really celebrated as, especially in front of white people. Like if you got the masses of white people celebrating you, you think that, oh, I've won something. I made it, right? But then to only understand they don't give a damn about you. As soon as you start talking Colin Kaepernick, as soon as you say something out of line, you're done. You know, as soon as you're LeBron James, shut up and dribble. But y'all are willing to pay hundreds of dollars to come watch me play. You're willing to allow your kids to wear my shoes, jersey, and, you know, you're just mad because I have an impact and I have, you know, the eyes. And this is the only platform that we can really use to speak to white people, because when else do white people sit down and just watch Black people do anything, you know? And so there's just so much. And so for me, I really had to step back. It's been hard. I don't really watch football anymore. You know, I'll still celebrate, you know, the wins and stuff because I understand its power. I understand that when I talk about sports, white men listen to me, right? So I can get in a lot of rooms because of my athletic ability, right? I get out of a lot of tickets because of like rings and stuff like that. Like, you know, so I use that to allow me to get in these spaces. But everybody doesn't get that. Like everybody doesn't succeed. Everybody doesn't win. And then everybody buys into the narrative of that same, like, I got to tread lightly and do what master says and move how master says. And, you know, I was just like, I can't do it. Like I was a captain on my football team and we cracked the top 24 in the country. So I know the power that I had, you know, in my voice and my influence. But then, of course, it's just counterculture because I like to smoke weed. I like rap music. I like hoodies and fitted caps.
Oh, those kind of Black people? Oh, we're not ready for that. We're not ready for that. You got to keep that part to yourself because we want you to be a good nigga. You got to be one of the good ones.
You know, I started growing my hair out, right? You know, because, you know, private school, you got to have a shape up, right? You got to be clean cut, all those different things. And those are all just, like you said, colonization, and that we have no agency over who we are, our thoughts, our bodies, our minds. And if the men don't have it, like the women ain't gonna have it, you know? So it's just gonna be a constant battle. And I say everything like, if you can't match a Black man with the white man, we're always gonna lose, right? Because, you know, when you look at politics, government, business, who is running that? Old white men. There's no Black men. I'm in entrepreneurship. I go to these venture capital firms, all white men. Who's investing in the Googles, the Apples, all these tech companies that become multi-billion-dollar companies in 5 to 10 years? We're nowhere to be found. These are just ideas.
On purpose. It's
yeah.
Absolutely on purpose.
But we don't even know, like we don't, you know, most of these kids are coming from Harvard, Yale. You know, you got to go to college to even be involved in venture capital to understand what it is. Like literally, you're a teacher. You have an idea to teach kids. You should be invested in. You should have millions of dollars pouring into your ideas because one, it'll change our culture. It'll help other Black families. You know, and it needs to be commercialized. So it's not just you, but how many people are going to invest in a Black woman with her hair like this, rocking big earrings with a voice that's different than culture, and who has all the money, who has the pockets of the investors, who has the pockets of the bankers. These are the people that run the world and everything that we do. And if we don't tap into that, we will continue to lose. Like you see TikTok, right? TikTok is blowing up. TikTok is a year old, but now what we're doing, we're marketing businesses on there. We advertise, we promote people to the masses, but then it's all based on algorithms and artificial intelligence. So if you don't have Black people.
Again, that's specifically designed without us in mind.
But then we blow it up. But we blow everything up. Like things don't blow up until Black people come on it and add our flavor to it. So all the dances, the music.
Like, yo, Black people are just so amazing and creative. Like when I see all this TikTok, I'm like, how do y'all even think of all this stuff?
It's insane. Like
amazing. I feel like that's good. I would never have thought of that, but that's good. That's good. But it is. It's designed without us. And so a lot of people have bought into the lie that if I conform, right? If I show these people what they want, if I wear my hair the way they want to and wear the clothes that they want me to wear, then I'll be able to get in these places, in these spaces. That ain't true.
Yeah, because I mean, you're at a high level.
Right. You just lose who you are. And now you're like, I've been faking this whole time. I don't even know who I am. I'm not this. And I still am not, you know, able to do the things that I thought that I was going to be able to do. So it's like, just be you. Right. And that's the message I get to my kids too. Like, it's okay to be who you are.
Right.
One of my kids all the time, and it drives me crazy, but I'm like, dude, this is how you were designed. Another one just talks all day long, and it drives me crazy, but this is who you are. And I never want you to feel like you have to silence your voice to appease other people. I never want my son to feel like you're not allowed to ask questions, because that's what Black people have been told, right? Just take what you get. You don't get to ask questions. You don't get to seek understandings. And then, you know, because when you're in a room with all these white guys, they'll ask question after question after question after question, like dumbass questions, right? You like, you weren't listening to nothing that he said, right? But we have to be like, well, if I ask a question, then they're gonna be like, this dumb Black girl, right? And so I want my kids to have that same confidence. When you walk into a room, you can ask any question that you want to until you understand. But that we have to raise them that way. You don't, you know, get 25 and be like, oh, I'm gonna do this. Right? And you've been conditioned your whole life to do that. That's why this work, I think, is just so important to help parents realize, like, what you're doing now is really shaping the adult that is going to, your child's going to be when they grow up. Right. And so a lot of us, you know, older, and we're like, dang, I wish, we're trying to heal from all the stuff that happened to us when we were younger. And it's like, oh, I wish my parents would have done this. And maybe I'm acting like this because my parents did this. So as people are thinking about their trauma from their childhood and just becoming more aware, a lot more people are willing to say, like, I don't want to do that to my kids. I might not know what to do differently, but I know I don't want to do that because I don't like how I feel now as a result of that thing. And so I think just having these conversations to let people know it's okay to do something different. Like, there are tools and people here who are doing things very differently, and our kids are thriving, and we're not feeling the guilt every single day. Like, oh my gosh, I just cussed my kid out, or I beat him, and now I feel bad. Right. Be free, y'all. We're gonna do this together. It's hard because it's different. Right. But I definitely think it's worth it.
Yeah, that's what I've realized. Because it's just like, it's very challenging because you just don't see it. It's not normal. But again, when you go into white communities, they have a spectrum of what people are doing. You know, you have the stay-at-home parents, you have the parents doing whatever they want for their kids. You have the people putting their kids in private school, taking them to lessons and stuff like that. And so I think, like you said, it's just options. We fought so hard to get our kids into school through, you know, after slavery and, you know, the civil rights movement and Jim Crow. And so it's like, oh, well, we've been fighting to get our kids into these schools and now we have to do it. And it's like, no, these schools still are operating in the same way. And so now we're really just making it worse, because now you're sending a kid into a colonized school where now they're not learning they're not even learning the truth. They're not even learning reality, but then they got to live in the world where it's like, so what is the truth? What is the messaging that we're really sending? Because I remember when the light bulb went off in my head, it was like junior year, we're in American presidency. And yeah, I was probably like one of your sons where, you know, I talked a lot, but I'm just looking around the room. And I'm like, there's no Black presidents. That's fairly odd. Like, and obviously, you know, the history, but I'm like, I think it was like, 2007. I was like, there's no Black man around this room. All the best athletes at this school are Black. We may have had a couple Black teachers. We had 2 or 3 Black coaches. But you're like, yo, I was like, this is crazy. I was like, this is pure insanity. And then obviously getting in trouble for school, failing I was failing math, like algebra 2. And this was one of the things I was getting in trouble for. Aisha walked me into school like 6:30, 7 o'clock in the morning because I would skip going to the math teacher because I hated her. Like, why would I go before class if I'm failing your class and she's an older white lady? You know, I don't care. And I had already committed to Ohio University. I already knew where I was going to school. So I was like, I'll fail class. I'll just take summer school. You know what I mean? And then during this class, college coaches were coming to see me because it was like right after lunch. So all the college coaches literally would be pulling me out of class during this class to come talk to me to recruit me. So I was like, I don't care about you. But I had that. Not every Black kid has that. you know, and I realized like if I don't speak up from my perspective and my privilege of having this space, I won't help anybody, because there's only not many athletes become All-Americans, Division I athletes, and even get to trial for the NFL. So even though we have thousands that are aspiring to do this, 10 of them will do it. You know what I mean? Really. And so I just had to realize that. And so, but, you know, obviously being 31, like, I don't really have many Black men like that I could look up to that are doing things. And half the time I'm higher than most of the older Black men. Like a lot of the rooms I'm in, there's 60-year-olds and then there's me. And I'm like, so you mean to tell me there's a 30-year gap where there's no Black men and I can make it into this room like this? And there's still, you know, and so that's when I was just like, man, I gotta start speaking. I gotta start bringing people in, getting these ideas, because we are just not getting it. And then everything can't be at the professional level. Like I can't just talk to my pro athletes. I can't just talk to my executive friends. I have to talk to normal people, you know, because normal people typically don't get their voice out there, or they don't feel like they have the agency to have that voice on a platform where people are listening to them. And so that's what I was like, I got to start tapping into the media and conversations because that's what's going to heal our people, to see people like yourself and understand that, hey, things are going to be different. But after you do things for a few years, you realize like, oh, I can operate freely and do what I want to do.
Okay. And it feels good. Yeah. And people ask me all the time, like, there's some magic potion that I have to get here. And I was like, no, I was over the bullshit, y'all. And I was like, I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it.
That's simple. It's that simple.
But I think it's so crazy because, you know, my brother he is able to work from home and his job is very flexible. So my kids don't.
Because he's a techie.
Yeah, but their mindset is so different because they have not been exposed to someone who like leaves the house every day to go to work and then comes back. Like they only know people that work from home. Mm-hmm. Like so they're not going to grow up thinking like, oh, I've got to go out and get this job. And they're like, what can I do to make money? All right, cool. How much money do I need next month? What can I do to make that? Okay, boom, good, got it. And it's such a different mentality. You know, they don't think that they have to go work first. They don't even know what that means. Like a boss?
Yeah.
What does that mean? Like someone what to do? Oh no, that's dumb. Why would I want that? I'm like, exactly. Like, I'm gonna be the boss, right? You can be, absolutely.
And then everything so really like be one thing. Like you can only do one thing, but then when you are at home, you realize I have this platter, I have a plethora. Like none of us can just do with one thing, but putting us in a box and you have people working the same job for 20, 30, 40 years. But then you try to be creative outside of that. You try to do things different outside of that. And it's like, no, like you're literally destroying who you are as a human being because you are very dynamic just being who you are. And you don't even get to channel that. You don't even get to express that. And you can only do this one thing. And that's what, you know, I think is so powerful about being a stay-at-home parent is you give them that option, that flexibility to even learn who you like, learn who you are, learn what you like.
I commend you for doing that. You know, it's not a lot of Black men who feel comfortable saying like, this is okay, like this is my lane. And it's because that's not how we were, you know, programmed to think about Black men, their role in society. So I think it's awesome that you're like, look, this is what my family needs. This is what works for us. So why wouldn't I do that?
Yeah. Well, I knew I wasn't going to be good in corporate America. Like I did corporate America for a couple years. And then everything just started happening. I was just like, I'm smarter than all of my managers. I'm smarter than all the people that are higher up than me, but you're going to make me do this bullshit just to check off a box. Like, or I can't move up to a level because I only been here for 2 years. You know what I mean? Or, you know, like that whole, and I'm a creative person. So I'm like, hitting these little rungs does nothing for me. Like I need to be creating. I need to be building. I need to be, you know, ideating. I need to be I had a sales job and I'd rather talk to people than sell them. Right. Cause They're like, oh yeah, you're great at sales, but you're not really selling it. Yeah, because I just got this whole person's life, and now I don't want to dig them for $1,000 when I know they don't really need this product or service, really.
So maybe this isn't the job. I'm gonna have to leave because
for me. And so, you know, when we moved to Columbus and Jen got her job, I was like, you know, I knew she would be more of the kind of willing to work her way up and do that, and she needed kind of that structure. And I was like, while we're here, and I actually quit my corporate job before we had kids. And so literally, you know, I quit work. I was at Verizon Wireless. And so I was like, I just can't do it anymore. I was stressed out. I was like, this is terrible. And so I literally walked out one day and I was like, I quit. I ain't give them a 2-week notice or nothing. I was like, I'll give y'all a 2-week notice, but there's no point in me doing that. And like all of my coworkers are like, what are you going to do? What are you going to, I was like, I'm not coming back here. I'm going to figure it out. I know what I'm not doing. And so, you know, that was the process. And then, you know, more and more, I just started to realize like, oh, this is way more powerful than just submitting to this corporate BS and, you know, just getting the bare minimum, just to get a paycheck, just to have a 401k. I was like, I'd rather go on this risk now while I'm young, youthful, got my, you know, whereabouts than be 10 years down the road and have wasted time, energy, and been stressed out, been all these different things. But again, I think that was my sports background, and I had done a lot of different things. Like I had modeled and acted before. I had, you know, worked in a lot of different spaces. So I knew I could do a lot of different things besides just sales and marketing. But, you know, for me, it was just taking that risk. And I'm like, we have to. Like, if I don't do it, I'm just going to continually pass down this generational thing, you know, that go to school, go find a job, work for 4 years, hate what you do. And then why do most Black people come home angry? Because they've been at work all damn day, you know, you're submitting to a boss that won't even listen to your ideas or even listen to who you are, or won't even, you know, treat you like a human being. They're treating you like a number. And so like you're desensitizing yourself to all these things. And now you're putting it on your kids, and now, you know, everything, you're putting it on your husband, and everything fits into that box. And so all of our relationships are just super stressed, there's so much friction. And so I was just like, I just got to do it. And I mean, it worked out perfect. Then we got pregnant, had Noah, and I was like, I'm a stay-at-home dad.
Got this. I got this.
So I would say the first year was like really rough. The first year was rough. The first year with both of them was rough, obviously with the pandemic and all that. But it's just like now everything is just freed up, and like it's way more like, you know, we're in our own little system and things are working, you know, how to work. And the next thing is to get Jen out of there, you know. So that's my goal. That's my next goal, is to get her to do her own thing. So that's why I'm like, I got to build these businesses up so she can, because I mean, again, you know, she's been born in the Midwest. So they just operate differently. They don't have that same kind of, I feel like that same hunger that, you know, that New York City kind of, that New York breeds in you, you know, go against the grain, do things differently, to have that true ultimate belief in self and who you are. And so I've had to learn just the culture, right? Like she always tells me, everybody's not you. Like everybody doesn't move how you move. Everybody doesn't want to take risks like you take risks. And so I've had to learn, like, yeah, I guess so. You know, I have been put in a position where I guess, you know, and then football too, sports, you see immediate results. So that's another thing that I've been kind of, you know, when you work out, you see your muscles getting bigger. When you run, you see yourself getting faster, and then you see the results. We win or we lose. You see whether you win or lose determines if the fans support you or they don't. And so you're seeing immediacy. So then, but being outside of sports and being like, yo, I see this, I need immediate results. I see this, I need immediate results. And then everybody's like, oh, no, we're going to take our time on this one. Then you get involved in politics.
Oh, yeah.
Like politics, how slow is politics? Politics is like,
yeah, it's the long game.
the long game. And then like I'm like, well, Black people are never gonna win because we're not even there.
Oh, intentionally. Nope. We need to just stop playing the game because it ain't where they're purposely leaving us out. And they've been doing it for so long.
Well,
right? So now it's
they just created the suburbs.
Right. So now they're like, I'm just going to make you think that we're going to let you in so that you'll stop trying so hard. But this really ain't for you. This still ain't for you. So I feel like that's where we are now. Like, oh, we'll let this one Black, yeah, come on, Blackie. Come on, you can come in here. Mm-hmm. So now look, we let Black folks in. Mm-hmm. No voice, no power, no real positioning. It's all a game. It's like, let them have that, y'all. We can do something else. Y'all keep that.
Yeah, I just think we need more voices like yourself, like you said, just really championing that idea that we can create our own thing. Even in these systems, even in this world that we're living in, you still create your own thing. Like, you know, you see all the Asian restaurants in white suburbs. Guess what? You can still live in the hood and go build a braiding salon in a white suburb and get their money and bring it back to your community. You know what I mean?
And I'm leaving. I'm out of here. I'm not gonna stay. I don't want to be in. I just want to take your money. So,
you know, because that's what they do. You know, they come into our cities, extract our wealth, extract our money. You know, everything that we buy does not come back to our community because we don't own it. We don't own the electric companies. We don't own the computer companies, the cell phone companies, the franchises, the McDonald's franchises that are in our cities, the Wendy's, you know, all the fast food restaurants, but then we live in food deserts. You know, most of our communities are food deserts. We don't even have healthy, nutritious foods. Our school systems are terrible because we're not creating our own schools, right? We should be creating our own schools that say, hey, this curriculum is designed for Black youth, you know? And so, you know, you see it in Maryland, you see it in like, obviously, and then Prince George's County, like growing up Prince George's County messes you up too, because you're like, man, I see all these Black people doing well. Like all of my friends are doing exceptional, you know, but then you move to a place like here and you're like, oh, my peer group is doing terrible, you know? And it's just like I'm alone, you know. The only people I have is my friends from PG County because we've grown up in that environment where we have that freedom, we have that ability to know that we're different, we're special, and we can create. And so I'm just trying to champion other people, other Black people, to really use their voice and use their space to think outside the box, you know, think outside of football, think outside of sports, talking, right? They don't tell you can make money talking. But then you become a professional, and now these people are getting paid millions of dollars to be public speakers or coaches or consultants.
Right. All you're doing is talking. You're just talking. And once you realize, why would I tell my child who's amazing who's been talking since he came out of the womb, why would I try to shut them down? Like, dude, people are getting paid, like you said, millions of dollars just to talk. Oh, you got that all day, bro. You got that.
Yeah,
it's like,
early.
It is what it is.
Early.
We got to encourage.
Yeah, and I think it's super important. Well, that's all I pretty much have for you. I think you pretty much hit a lot of the stuff on the head in terms of, I don't want to take up too much of your time. We've already been on here for 1:09. You know, we can probably go forever, but is there anything else you want to say to the world, to the people, YouTube, the whole social media?
It, right? Like, just be willing to question how you're showing up for your kids and how white supremacy is impacting the things that you think, the way that you talk to your kids, the things that you do to and with your kids. And just know that there are folks out here who are doing some things different. So if you're like, what does this look like? How do I do this? How do I change? Just reach out, because we're here to help. Like, we are using our voices to change because we know that our kids deserve better, and we're intent on giving it to them.
For sure. And so are you promoting anything? You got a website, you got email, you got books coming, you got courses?
So DomariDickinson.com has all of the information in terms of upcoming classes and courses. I'm also on Instagram at Domari Dickinson and on Facebook at Positive and Purposeful Parenting. So you can find all of the things that are coming up. We do monthly classes around this work. about how to decolonize your parenting and really show up in a more positive, purposeful, and peaceful way. So yes, hit me up, Facebook, Instagram, or my website for more information.
Boom. That's what I'm talking about.
Boom.
Show love,
All right, thank you so much for this opportunity. We got to do it again. I feel a part two coming sometime.
Yeah, we'll get a part two. This is going to be a continuous thing. So, you know, you're my second one I did for 2021, or my third one I did for 2021. So I'm building a list out, and we're going to circle this wagon around, and we're going to keep talking. We got to keep having the conversation, you know, and I think it's largely important. So thank you for being willing to share and show love. So keep taking care of those beautiful babies. I'll holler at you later.
You too. Bye.
Love you. Bow.